Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome to the round 6 of the Norway Chess tournament in 2023. We're following now the thriller of the day. We're following now the eternal derby between Alireza Firouzja and Hikaru Nakamura. So these two guys gave us so much pleasure in the past. Their games also on chess.com especially, I think, were always incredible with dirty ideas in the opening stage, with immortal tactics. So always they played beautiful dynamic games, and this game that they played today had, I think, an importance on both sides. First of all, of course, in this event, look at this, Alireza Firouzja and Hikaru Nakamura have, I think, realistic chances to make an impact in this event, but they're also battling for the throne, who is the second best rated player in the world, because yesterday Hikaru took over. Magnus Carlsen is still the best rated player in the world, but now Hikaru is the number 2 because Fabiano lost yesterday his game against Nyezhmetdinov-Rossolimo. So it's really also dynamic here change on the rating list. So far, as I said, Hikaru Nakamura is now the second best rated player in the world. So let's see now what happened between Alireza and Hikaru. It was, in my opinion, really dynamic game. The game finished a couple minutes ago. It's really one of the most important games so far in this beautiful chess event. So here Alireza Firouzja opened with the move e4. Hikaru's response was c5, the Sicilian knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, the Rossolimo Nyezhmetdinov attack here by Alireza Firouzja. Hikaru goes into this Fianchetto variation with the move g6. This line has been really popular in the World Chess Championship match between Caruana and Magnus Carlsen. Now Alireza simply castles, and after move bishop to g7, we have now this idea, bishop to c6, and after b takes c6. Okay, white gave up the bishop pair, but has provoked some structural weaknesses in the position, the weak c5 pawn and also the c6 weakness. So in the game, rook to e1 with the preparation to break and enter here, maybe with the move e5, queen to c7 by Hikaru, and now after move knight to a3, which is also a very interesting choice here. Alireza has good chances to jump with the knight on an active score c4, but also can prepare ideas of c3, knight to c2, and then have really great preparation to break and enter with the move d4. So now Hikaru counterplays this idea with also a very interesting move, with sort of a theoretical novelty, we can say, because this move has never been played in chess history. It's now the first time that I see someone played this move. At least I'm not seeing games in the database in this particular line. So knight to h6, very interesting idea, because after move c3 that Alireza is playing now, after kingside castling, now with the move h3, of course, Alireza prevents this move knight to g4. Hikaru plays on an interesting idea f6, and this is quite a spectacular setup that also Hikaru is preparing. Look at this, knight to f7, then e5, and then maybe also d5, breaking really in the center of the board, because we have to say it, white gave up the bishop for knight, but has also created now a massive center for black. So black has a slight advantage also in the center of the board. So it's now preparing, of course, d5, but also e5 breakthroughs. So let's see now how Alireza counterplays in the center. Alireza plays immediately the move d4. After move c takes d4, c takes d4, and now notice that in the next couple moves the bishop will come on e3 and the rook will come on c1. So it's still hard for black to make immediately an impact in the center of the board. Although you're dominant in the center, but your queen is a little bit exposed here in the on the c5. For instance, you can break and enter maybe with the move c5. You want to get rid of your bad pawn sort of on c6. This would be very dangerous. Look at this, knight to b5 could happen. You can play here maybe even the move queen to c6, but now actually d takes c5 is even working, because you don't have time to pick up the knight here on b5, because queen to d5 is simply winning the game. Or you play something like knight to f7 here after move d takes c5, then look at this, queen to b3 is going to happen, bishop to e3, so still the queen gets exposed. Maybe you can also pick up the pawn here. Look at this, a4, we support the knight, and then bishop to e3. Again, the queen gets a little bit exposed. So you see, this c5 progress was, I think, a natural idea here for black. Black wants to play the move, but it's quite impossible. I'm not saying this move is losing here for black, but it's really unpleasant then to face this white possibilities in the next couple moves. So after move c takes d4, that's why Hikaru broke now the center in a different way with the move d5. But again, a couple of positional unbalanced structures we have here. We have first of all this again weak square on c5, but also now the backward pawn on c6. And now Alireza has a clear target. Now he knows where to attack, and you see now in the next couple moves how really Alireza understands the position in a good way. He plays now the move bishop to d2. First of all, he wants to, of course, liberate now the c file here, and also attack this backward pawn, attack the weaknesses. In the game, queen to b7, attacking now the pawn on b2. But now Alireza ignores the threat, plays now simply the move e5. This is really very interesting choice. This is the way to go. Of course, here, for instance, instead of this move queen to b7, d takes e4 seems also tempting for black, but actually it's not good. I think rook to e4, you can play maybe a tempo against the rook to e1, and now you're maybe preparing this idea e5. But look at this now with rook to c1. I'm not seeing good way. How are you going to counterplay here against this backward pawn on c6? d5 is immediately a threat. Bishop to b4, bishop to c3, knight to c4. So every continuation I think here is in white's favor. So in my opinion, not a good game here for black. So that's why Hikaru played at least a counterattack against the pawn on b2. We have now the move e5. A really wild choice here by Alireza, because after queen to b2, that could be of course black's possibility. Then it gets again quite spectacular. Knight to c2, you play something like bishop to f5, but now knight to b4 locks even the queen a little bit here, we have to say it. Now this pawn is unprotected. You can maybe try something like bishop to e4, but now after knight to c6, queen to b7, this should be, I think, perfectly fine now for both sides. After a couple of trades of pawns, now black can maybe attack the knight, but white will regroup and has now again some clear targets here on c5 especially. I think this is now a new weakness in black's position. But maybe I even considered that Hikaru should have gone maybe in these types of lines. Queen to b2, although seems like a poison pawn, but actually it's not, I think. Maybe Hikaru should have gone for this. You take the pawn, but at least you get rid of your bad pawn that will be taken, I think, in the next couple moves for sure, or it will remain a structural weakness for the whole game. Maybe Hikaru should have gone for this kind of trade, simply getting rid of this annoying pawn that stands now here really in the whole position. So maybe this was the way to go for Hikaru. But Hikaru plays now knight to f7 on his plan. Now Alireza goes with knight to c2. We have bishop to f5, e takes f6 here by Alireza. We have e takes f6, and now rook to c1. Again, Alireza doesn't care for this pawn on b2. Let's see again what happens if you play queen to b2. Again, knight to b4. You can maybe try to trade off the rooks, but look at this. Rook to c6 is quite spectacular, I think, here. Then again, the d5 pawn is weak. Then if we take out the d5, then suddenly also the f6 pawn is weak. So I'm not sure. As I said, in a couple moves ago, Hikaru should have gone for, I think, for the b2 pawn. Now it's a different story. Now I think when we watch now this position, white should be here much better. So in my opinion, taking out the pawn on b2 is not working. So here after rook to c1, that's why Hikaru played now on the blockade here, a5, not allowing this move knight to b4. Now he's really threatening the move queen to b2, because then of course knight to b4 is not a possibility anymore. So that's why Alireza plays now the move b4. So now he said, I had it enough. You had your chance with your b2 pawn. Now I'm going to advance the pawn and go for a queenside attack. So a4, Hikaru passes through. Also maybe a slightly risky choice. A takes b4, knight to b4 maybe creates again an unbalanced position here on the queen side. Again, the c6 pawn is there. It's simply a long-term weakness. You cannot even improve. But I think at least in this scenario, you created also weakness on the queen side. With this move that Hikaru played, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's a different story. With this move, with the move a4, there's simply no more a2 weakness here. So that's why here, after move bishop to f4, a rook from f to d8 that Hikaru played, this wasn't good. Because Hikaru should have realized that he could have maybe here problems on the c file. Again, a better way to go is to play queen to a6 after something like a3. That would be, I think, the natural way here for Alireza. Now comes the stunning idea, bishop to d3, and the bishop to d3 activates again the bishop. The bishop can come on b5, protecting the c6 pawn, or you can lock here maybe the c file by playing the move bishop to c4. So suddenly this bishop is breathing again. We have to say it. On f5 it's not so good, because here or e6 or maybe on d7 the bishop is always a part of the pawn chain. So this was now Hikaru's maybe last chance to activate the light square bishop, but he played rook from f to d8. Alireza played now the move a3, and now after move knight to d6 that Hikaru played, maybe here g5 is slightly more accurate, playing aggressively here on the king side. But now after move knight to d6 we have now the move knight to e3. Here knight to e4 is not working, because of course knight takes f5 weakens the pawn structure. You get queen to h5, and you will probably lose the pawn on f5 in the next couple of moves. But after move knight to d6 that Hikaru played, we have here knight to e3. You have to step back, and now a great move here by Alireza. He played now the move bishop to d6, getting rid of the only piece that can occupy maybe here the c4 and e4 square. Now after move rook to d6 we have now two knights versus two bishops middle game, in which we have to say the knights are much better. Especially look at this, c6 is still weak, so Hikaru never solved the positional problems of c6. c5 is weak also. f5 you cannot play because of the weakness of e5. The bishop on e6 is paralyzed by its own pawn on d5 and c6. You cannot even get the bishop back into the game on h6. Every even trades of pieces is in white's favor, so it's really stuck position. This is not the optimal position, of course, for the bishop here. From this point on, I think Alireza is really taking over in the game. So rook to e2, we have queen to b6, queen to c2, we have bishop to d7, and now rook to e1. Here Alireza is basically showing that he's dominating all over the board. He has the c file attack as a possibility, but he has also great progress now on the e file. So in the game rook to e6, we have knight to d1, and the realistic goal I think that white should try is to reroute one of these knights. You can do whatever you like, but I think one of these knights should be, of course, cemented around the square c5, around this weakness. This is now the clear target, and then leave, maybe if even black trades off his bishop for a knight on c5, leave him simply with a bad bishop here on d7, which will be always just a part of the pawn chain. Then in a potential knight versus bishop endgame, white should be again much better. So rook to e2, we have queen to e2, bishop to f8. Hikaru is somehow trying to control the c5 square. Now Alireza is going again for the idea, knight to d3, knight to c5. We have queen to b5. This is a good move, I think, by Hikaru. He wants to, of course, get this kind of a position where he could get rid of his annoying backward pawn, maybe occupy the c file and get also somehow back into the game. But of course Alireza is not interested. He plays queen to d2, we have bishop to d6, we have knight to h2, queen to b8, knight to f1 here by Alireza. Here we have king to g7, and now comes this idea knight to e3 with the preparation finally to play knight to d3 and knight to c5. So h5 here, Hikaru is at least somehow trying to counterplay. He knows that he's probably worse when it comes to positional understanding of the game, but when it comes to tactics, of course he has some opportunities with a beautiful bishop pair, with this dynamic position on the king side. Maybe there are even some tactics that are possible around the square h3. In the game knight to d3, now comes this idea queen to c8, trying maybe to sacrifice something around the square h3. That's why Alireza advanced the pawn to h4. We have bishop to e6, and now finally really this move knight to c5. And you don't want to give up now the bishop for knight here. The best way when you even encounter an outpost like this is just to play around this outpost. Okay, leave the knight there, but do something else. Reroute your pieces around that knight. Go with your pieces where the pieces are not attacked by this knight. So maybe just transpose your pieces through the hole on the other side of the board. Maybe this was the way to go. So Hikaru does the correct thing. He doesn't want, of course, to trade off here the bishop for knight, because after d takes c5, knight to c2, and then knight to d4 would be a new maneuver of the knight. And when the knight comes on d4, then it's unstoppable. Then it's attacking the c6 pawn. There are even breakthrough motifs with the move b5. The e file will be open. So here again, as I said, when we trade off the pieces like this in a potential endgame, the knight would be much better than the light square bishop here for sure. So that's why after move knight to c5, Hikaru left the position like this. Queen to c2, we have rook to a7, knight to c1, and after bishop to f4 here. After Hikaru tried maybe to get rid of the knight on e3, but here Alireza plays knight to d3 again. In my opinion, bishop to e3 would be quite risky, because after f takes e3, queen to e8, king to f2 can be even played. Again, we reach this endgame that I think white would love to get, the knight versus bishop endgame, in which the knight would be much better. After move knight to d3 and bishop to d6. Here, believe me or not, both players after move knight to c5 agreed to a draw, which is, I think, a good choice for Hikaru. I think white is much better here. White has to push this game to the limits, but we have to say it. Alireza had only 2 minutes on the clock. He had to make a really great decision here. Here we have to say it, as I said, white should be much better, but it's hard to make anything, because never, but really never, Hikaru will take out the bishop for knight that he showed in the previous moves. So it's still a tough time to make anything of this position. You cannot even play something like knight to a4, taking out the pawn. Queen to a8 is going to happen. Then you have problems around the square a3. So although it's a seemingly really better position here for white, it was, I think, even a good choice for Alireza not to complicate things too much. They have to play, of course, the Armageddon game, in which Alireza has to now win the game, but positionally, of course, this should be better for white, pardon me, but it's a tough decision with not so much time on the clock. Alireza made, I think, also the good decision. So after a tough battle, after a tough positional struggle, the game ended with a draw. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really interesting ideas of the Nyezhmetdinov-Rossolimo Attack. We have seen also beautiful theoretical novelty here by Hikaru Nakamura. If you want to see more games from this chess event, you can also check out my coverage so far. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.